Now, I always start the service by doing what?
Standing up and do the blessing.
In what language?
Amen.
Bismillah, Wilibn, Wilruk, Al-Qudus, Alillah, Al-Wahid, Ameen.
Amen.
It means the blessing of God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Allahumma, but the Lord is here and His Spirit is with us. Okay? You can have it in Arabic if you want. Bismillah, Walibin, Walraq, Al-Qudus, Alillah, Al-Wahid, Ameen. Or in Latin. Anyway, it's good being with you. It's great praising God together. It's great worshipping God. I'm a great fan of Romans, particularly Romans chapter 8. Why? Because I was reared in a staunch Calvinistic, strict Baptist family, and it was very good getting the 5 points of Calvinism from Romans, right? Who remembers the 5 points of Calvinism? Total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, perseverance of the saints, tulip. It was all part of the indoctrination. You see, it's not only Muslims who do indoctrination. Christians are a specialist in it as well. I know, I had it. And I was reared to believe that all other Christians were wrong and dodgy and not going to heaven unless they were real Calvinists. But I was a bit odd because they had to be real Calvinists and real Pentecostals. My father was a Calvinist and my mother was the daughter of the Smith Wigglesworth man. And for those who weren't here this morning, this is Smith Wigglesworth's private Bible that he used all his life until he died in 1947. Donald G. did his funeral, and he gave it to the person who had worked with Smith Wigglesworth for years, my grandfather. And when my grandfather died, he gave it to me, you know. That's the way things work. And when I die, I've already been told who I give it to. There's an argument, though, between my biological children and my adopted children. They all want it. So Dawood and my boys have come to arrangement. Dawood gets a Cartier watch that somebody gave me, and I gather my staff have lost it. And Yossi gets a Bible. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs. Romans 8:17. Heirs of God, co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in his suffering, in order that we may share in his glory. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. The suffering of this present world is not worth comparing with the glory that is to come. But, yes, we have suffered so much in Iraq. We have had so many of our people killed, massacred and slaughtered. But it's not unless we have shared in the glory of the cross that we will celebrate the real resurrection glory. And you do not know the glory unless you know the suffering. And that's why it's so important that we take seriously the suffering of the persecuted church. The persecuted church is our brothers and our sisters. We are one. We are one church. One in the glory of God. And the glory of God will surmount everything. Because it's only when we know the suffering that we know the glory. I have never witnessed or experienced the glory of God like I have in the greatest place of oppression in Baghdad. I have lived much in Jerusalem and I have stored on Mount Zion and prayed, but I have never seen the glory like I've seen it in the midst of the persecution. As Lena, my daughter, said to me one day, my adopted daughter, she said, we had Voice of the Martyrs visiting, and they said, why is it that you're all so happy? You're in the midst of war. In the last 3 minutes, 3 rockets have come open, and you're the happiest people ever. And she said, you see, when you've lost everything, Jesus is all you've got left. And Jesus is everything. When you've lost everything, Jesus is everything. I went to school. You know I've got my school. You saw the picture of school this morning. They didn't see a picture of school. Do you think we should show it to them later? At the end of the talk, we'll show school. And I went into school and I gave everybody a cross. I gave all the children a cross. And Joseph, they're all the boys are Joseph, and the girls are Mary. The Muslim boys are all Muhammad. So we've only got 3 names, Joseph, Mary, and Muhammad. But they are Isaac and Joe. Isaac. Now, so I gave this to Joseph, and he cried. He said, I wanted it for my daddy, but Dash has killed my daddy, so he can't have it. I said, this one is for your daddy. And we will take it and we will put it on the altar. And every day when you come into school, you'll kiss your daddy's cross. And it will be here for him. I love my children. They're the best in the world. And every time that I'm coming to England or America, I go into class, my class, class 5, and I say to the children, what shall I tell them when I go to England and America? They always say the same thing. They say, tell them that Jesus loves them. And when you say thank you to them for giving us our school. So I do. But last time Joseph said to me, Abuna, Baba, when you go, will you take my cross? And will you give it to them? I said, your cross? He said, yes, I want you to take my cross and give it to them. I said, I'll find other crosses for them. But he said, take my cross. So here is Joseph's cross. And he wants to give it to one of you. Now, I usually say, who wants Joseph's cross? And everybody says they want it. But Joseph's cross is for Joe. There we are. Remember, Joseph gave you that cross. And that cross is our hope. Have I got any other crosses here, Peter? Just one?
You got one more of that size, and then little ones.
Little one. Can I have a little one? All the time I'm asking. They must be fed up with me. So much. Here we are. These are nice crosses. That's a nice one. That's for you, Daphne.
Oh,
The shouter.
The shelter.
thank you. Because you gave me one in Jerusalem and I have it in my bedroom, can I give it to somebody?
Yeah, you choose it, who you should give it to. Oh. So two of you have got crosses. You haven't got one though, have you? You do? You have a pen?
Yeah.
Would you like a cross to go with your pen? A little one. Here we are. Here we are. There we are.
Thank you.
Good. I like him. All of our people, they've suffered so terribly. How can they show what they have suffered? Our children made bracelets. I've got one on. Anybody else got one? Well, these bracelets, they go big and small. They have the cross on them. And anybody who makes a donation to our work will get a bracelet. Right? Have you got any bracelets, Ed? Because otherwise I'm offering them when there's no room. Who would like one? Take it. Come and get it. First tier gets it. First tier. You dropped your card, you dropped yourself. Thank you.
Andrew, You just gave a bracelet to somebody and they dropped this at your feet, so I guess that's your donation.
A Visa card. No, I like real money, not plastic money.
Actually, Andrew, we can cope with plastic money as well.
We can. Well, it's so good being with you. And it's so good being able to tell you that even though we've got nothing, we have everything. Because the Lord is here. Allahumma, and His Spirit is with us. And His Spirit will enable us to keep going and to keep moving forward. And one of the wonderful things is that however much they, the bad guys, I don't know who all the bad guys are. Right, we know about ISIS. Now, when I was kidnapped, ISIS didn't even exist. So I was kidnapped, thrown in a black room, and I suddenly remembered that on my phone I had some wonderful music. So I listened to that in the midst of darkness. I got a bit uncomfortable. I was sitting on the floor and there were things poking in me. And I got my phone and looked and they were chopped off fingers and toes all over the floor. And that is what you have to endure when you are called to do what God has called you to. You see, God doesn't make everything easy. Where's the blue book? I used to have a blue book, and it was called the Blue Book. But when the Ayatollah's son came, he renamed it the Jew Book. And this is a terrible story, all about what the Christians have done to the Jews over 2,000 years. I've got one Jewish friend here. Would you like this book? There we are.
Thank you very much.
And then we need to realize that one of the big callings on our life to us as Christians in this generation is to repent for the things of the past generation. We can't just say, oh, that was them, they weren't properly saved. Hard luck, they were. And even those who were properly saved did wrong. And so we say to Hashem, the name, we say, Lord, we are sorry for the tragedy committed by our forefathers to your people, the Jewish people. If you bless Israel, I will bless you. If you curse Israel, I will curse you. We read in Genesis 12. And the fact is that our people have cursed Israel. I know that you cannot say in any way that the Shoah, the Holocaust, was Christian. But it happened in the midst of Christian Europe. And the Christians, apart from people like Bonhoeffer, did nothing. They said nothing. They allowed it to happen. And even the great leaders of the Protestant church, people like Martin Luther, he started off loving the Jews for a few weeks, and then he totally turned against them. He said, destroy their courts, pull down their synagogues, destroy their homes, for they are not the people of God. And this is one of the greatest tragedies of history. And we say, sorry, Lord. We're sorry for the history of our people. Sorry for the tragedy that happened in the name of the church. You know, the Christian Zionists, they're really quite nutty. A lot of them are really quite crazy. We might be Christians, we might be Zionists, but the terminology Christian Zionists are these people who think that if they buy the green piece of cloth, God will bless them and give them everything. That is not what it's about. We stand with Israel because we love them. Do you know why we love them? Sorry?
Because God does.
And why does God love them? Because He loves them. We love them because He loves them. And He loves them because He loves them. And He loves you. And do you know why He loves you? Because He loves you. He loves you because He loves you. And because He loves you, He loves you. And because He loves you, we love others. And the foundation of all that we are, as I said before, is about loving, loving, and loving. And loving is about showing love. It's not just about speaking love. You know, we're all about love. Yes, we're good Christians. We love everybody. Rubbish. Show it. Love, love, and love. So much of our work in Israel is not just about loving Israel in word, but also in deed. People say to me, why are you such an extreme Zionist? Don't you love the Palestinians? And I say, well, actually, most of my staff are Palestinians or Arabs, because all of us know that we love both Jew and Arab, and we stand with both, and we help both. I have various schools I have started. I have a huge school in Beit Jala in Bethlehem, and this school prays in Aramaic and Arabic and Hebrew. Now, if any of the Palestinian Authority knew that one of their schools was teaching Hebrew, because they're teaching Hebrew to the children, and this isn't Israeli Arabs, this is Palestinian Arabs, and yet they are. And the school is #1 in the whole of the PA. And it's very much part of the Cross of Nails community from Coventry, the Reconciliation School. And it's wonderful to see what God is doing. And it's wonderful to see what God does when you truly love his people. And as I said before, it doesn't mean everything the state of Israel does you agree with. But it means that you stand with the Jewish people. No people in history have suffered like the Jewish people. You know, we cannot even begin to understand what actually happened at the Holocaust. We cannot. Over 6 million people killed. Why? Because they were Jewish. Why? Was there such anti-Jewish feeling? Because there was anti-God feeling. And the nearest thing you can get to attacking God is to attack his people. So I am quite open in what I say about Israel, and whenever I do in the Church Times write anything, I always get hundreds of letters from people saying, what about the Palestinians? Don't you care about them? Have you not seen what it's like? Have you been to Gaza? You only care about the Jews. No, my school is Arab. My school is Palestinian. My relief work is with the Palestinians. Israel looks after its own because it believes in looking after its own. The PA, you give them money and they put it in their pocket and they all get rich. This is a sad reality. It's not that I'm anti-Palestinian. Most of my relief work is to the Palestinians because they need it. And the groups which help us, not only in Palestine, but also in Iraq, the biggest group helping us in Iraq is called IsraAid. It's an Israeli NGO helping where Israelis aren't allowed to go. It's rather good, that. An Israeli NGO helping where Israelis can't go. And so I'm telling you this because this is essential to our understanding of serving. Unless you have suffered with me, you cannot experience the glory with me. But if you've known my suffering, you will know the glory of the resurrection, the glory of being an Easter people. You see, we are called to be an Easter people in a Good Friday world. Did you know that? We are called to be an Easter people in a Good Friday world. In the midst of Good Friday, we see the glory of Easter breaking through. And many of you will have immense personal suffering at this time, or suffering of your loved ones, or suffering of those who are close to you. And God says, in that situation, I want my glory to show. You know, I have not been exempt from suffering, but I have not been exempt from the glory. I have had 39 operations. I have spent months in intensive care through my youth and my adolescence and 20s. I've got MS. Supposedly, life is really difficult. And I can honestly say, I am the happiest person I know. I'm not sad. And I really get annoyed when all these Christians come up to me and say, oh, we want to bless you. We want the Lord to be with you in your suffering. I say, I'm fine. There's no problem. I'm perfectly happy. Just get on and sort yourself out. You're the ones with the problem. I've got no problem. I'm serious. I'm serious. Anybody disagree with me? You don't? Now, there is somebody here who definitely disagrees with me and is saying to themselves now, that's not true. He should know what I'm experiencing. Well, the message for you, I don't know what you're experiencing, but God does. And for you, God is saying, I will show you the glory. God wants you, after this meeting, to say to him, give me your glory, Lord. And you say, when? And you shout, now! Now! We need the glory now! What is he doing on that thing? What are you drawing? What are you drawing? You're drawing me! Wow! Yeah, but how are you doing it? Because that's exactly like me.
I just took the photo on that photo.
You took a photo? Yeah. Didn't have that when I was a little boy. That is really clever. You take a photo and then you draw it. Really cool, that. Pretty awesome. Oh, very good. So, people always think to me, well, tell us about the suffering, the brokenness. Well, I tell them about Joseph's cross, the little boy. I tell them about our brokenness and our joy. And I tell them about the glory of Easter. You know, when I go to all these places all around the world, I went to a conference recently on the persecuted church, and all I could do was speak about the joy of our people and the glory of our people. That was it. Now, preachers are usually boring, so I'm going to shut up now. And you ask me the questions. Have I left enough time?
Plenty.
Right. Plenty of time for you to ask questions.
Yeah, if you have a question, just put your hand up and then I'll come to you with the mic. He's not that scary.
Could we hear a little bit more about your kidnapping experience, please?
Well, I was looking for some people who had been kidnapped. 4 people had been kidnapped. And I was using my own intelligence sources. And most of my intelligence sources are the bad guys. And the bad guys know the bad guys. And so they're likely to be nearer to the truth. And I was getting a bit too close to the bad guys. So they took me. Dark little room. They didn't take my phone. They didn't take the money I had on me. So I just stayed there. Did some singing and praising. And then after a while I was getting a little bored. Doesn't take long in my case. So I invited them in. I said, would you like to come and be with me? Would you like some money and then I can go? Fluss, fluss. How much money have you got? Quite a lot. So we did a little deal and I went out. Said bye. Assalamu habibi. That was it. There we are. Lose some, win some. Next one.
Could you tell me the update? Could you tell me the update of Iran compared, with Israel at present and the threat that region is giving Israel at the present time?
Well, Israel takes it very seriously. They've got nothing to worry about. Iran won't do anything. They might have a nuclear weapon. If they try and get near, there's a group with 3 letters, IDF. And none of them would get 5 centimetres past the Israeli Defence Force. So I'm all right about it. I'm going to see Assad soon. He's invited me to go and see him. I wasn't going to go, but part of the deal is if you go to see him, you can go and look after the Christians as well. I used to work with Assad. Did you know that? He did the eye surgery and I put his patients to sleep. So I anaesthetised them and he did their retinitis work or cataracts. Next one, please.
Just wanted to ask about ISIS and just a little bit more about your thoughts on ISIS and whether the way to deal with them is love, like you've been talking about, or your thoughts about how to deal with ISIS, I suppose, is the best way, the response to them.
I'll be honest with you. ISIS can only be dealt with by troops on the ground. You know, you can't pretend that love is going to deal with this one. The really bad guys, you need the IDF, and you haven't got them. So, there was an ISIS guy who was blown up by one of his own bombs. And he was in hospital in Lebanon. And he was doing quite well in hospital. You know, dying slowly. But one night, Jesus came to the end of his bed and said, "Follow me." So one of the ISIS commanders is now following Jesus. But there's no simple solution.
How did it feel the first time you went to Baghdad?
First time was in the Saddam days. And I did a programme for the BBC and listened to it a few months ago to see what I really felt the first time I went to Baghdad. And it was quite interesting. I quite liked it. I had to walk over a mosaic of George Bush on the floor before I got in the hotel. And I happened to be there with George Bush's deputy, one of his assistants who had smuggled in with us. Quite good at smuggling people into Iraq. So we managed just. Next one.
Andrew, you said that one of the top ISIS men in hospital met with Jesus and now a follower of Jesus. Where does that leave him in terms of, I mean, presumably he's not with ISIS now?
Lost his job.
And turned away from that sort of behaviour. Yeah.
ISIS don't like you following Jesus.
I have a question for you, Andrew. Have you any comment to make on this quote? Andrew White is one of the people that I boast of having met, and even more so boast of having worked with. He is one of the most unusual current characters currently within the Church of England, defying the accusation that all ordained clergy now fit into a single mould are without character or eccentricity. In the 18th century, Andrew would have been a pirate or a privateer. He has the extraordinary capacity to sail the seas of conflict, coming alongside those involved in causing and delivering violence, especially around the issues of religion, and capturing them for the cause of peace. To do this, he breaks most of the rules in any book of health and safety, personal protection, and bureaucratic
This
process.
sounds like the Archbishop of Canterbury.
I just wonder if you had any comment on what Justin Welby thinks about it.
He knows his work with me. I don't deny any of it. It just took me a while to learn what a privateer was. Any other questions? Yes.
Andrew, I just wondered the attack, as it were, from Assyria, being Mosul, I think, is it HQ for ISIS as well?
Yeah.
Do you think it's linked to the ancient Assyrian? Is there such a thing as the spiritual conflict manifesting itself in the same pattern that we see with the ancient Assyrians, or is that just taking it all a bit too far?
Well, it's very interesting. The Assyrians, the word Assyrian nowadays means a Christian. Because all the Assyrians, don't forget, Jonah went there to Nineveh, and all the Assyrians started believing in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then the whole of Nineveh became Jewish. And then Mar Thoma, doubting Thomas, went there on his way to India, stopped off and said, "Did you know that the Mashiach had arrived? The Messiah has come." And they said, "No, nobody told us." So they all believed it. And until 2 years ago, they were all Christians. There's been no mass said in Nineveh for 2 years. And so the Christians have fled to the north, to Nineveh, to Mosul, not Muslim, what rubbish am I saying? To the north, to Kurdistan and Dahor and Solomania and places, and many have fled to Jordan.
That's why I wondered if it was the ancient thing, because it's the same method of warfare. I was struck by the rod of anger statements.
It's the same place.
Same place.
Yeah.
I was just going to follow on from really what Danny was just saying about the when you started about how the Assyrians are all Christians. Could you tell us a little bit about the Christian makeup in Iraq and how there comes to be an Anglican church in Baghdad and all the Christian communities that are the spectrum that is there in Iraq, or was there perhaps before being shut down?
Well, the churches are still in Baghdad. There are 2 million Christians left in Iraq. Sorry, 200,000. There were 1.5 million Christians in Iraq, and now most of them have fled, and the suffering has been terrible. And the Christians are, the biggest church is the Chaldean church, which is a unique church, or the Catholic church. And then there are the Syrian Orthodox church, and the Melkite church, and the Syrian Catholic church. So there are many denominations. But it's interesting seeing what's happened amongst all the Christians in Jordan, those who have fled. We have got no denominations. I'm not the Anglican priest. I'm just the priest. I'm just a Buna. And we've got no denominations. At the end of the day, isn't it terrible that what persecution it took to drive to real ecumenics? You become one when you've lost everything. Any Iraqis here? No Iraqis?
Last week or so, the news was telling us that they're instructing the Bell Temple at Trafalgar Square. They've now spun it to say it's the Ark of Triumph. So what's your thoughts on that?
Building a mosque in Trafalgar Square.
No, it's
Not
the
a mosque,
Palmyra
the arch.
But they're changing it now to a Roman arch.
It was going to be put in at the Temple of Bell, but it's been changed on the 19th of April.
Which is a Satanist day, but literally, because we mapped out that Trafalgar Square literally is the heart of the nation. So it's,
I really don't know anything about England. I'm sorry. Ask me about the Middle East, or about Jerusalem, or about Iraq, but not England. I know nothing. All I know is that Trafalgar Square was where I went when I was a little boy, after I'd been to see Father Christmas at Hamlet's. But I haven't done that for a long while.
Can I just inquire further, because you obviously speak freely about angels, as you did earlier about some of the pictures. I remember you recounting what you discerned to be the cloud of glory amongst you. Could you just explain, because in trying to convey that to other people, people often give the impression that they, today, New Covenant, the cloud, what's that about? Have you experienced it? If you could just help us, because I'm fascinated by the natural things and the best things that we can do, but I'm also fascinated by your insights on the supernatural stuff that God does.
This all happened in a day in 203, and I was up in the hotel called the Palestine Hotel in Baghdad, where all the journalists were in the midst of the war. I looked out I'd been to the Ayatollah, And the Ayatollah had said, Abuna, we need some food, we've got no meat. He said, can you buy some? I said, well, I've got $12. How much do you need? He said, the whole of Iraq. So I prayed about it. Lord, I've got nothing. If you want me to have anything, do it. The Ayatollah heard when I said to him I had nothing, he said, well, you can pray about it. So when an Ayatollah tells you to pray about it, you pray. So I prayed about it, went outside, and went onto my pretend balcony, looked over, and I saw this huge cloud over the Tigris. And it was like, I just immediately knew it was a cloud of glory. I was acutely aware the presence of God was there. I just kept going out and looking at it and looking at it. Eventually I thought, oh, it's well past bedtime, it's kind of 3 in the morning. So I went to bed, prayed, Lord, please don't let that cloud go. And I looked at the cloud and it was there. The morning I got up, I went downstairs to breakfast. And a big American guy came up to me called Andy. He says, hey father, want some meat? I said, what do you mean, do I want some meat? He said, well, you're a father, aren't you? Aren't you helping the people of Iraq? Do you want some meat? I said, yes, I want some meat. I said, how much meat have you got? He said, enough. I said, who can it go to? He said, where will you tell me to send it? I said, well, we need it for the whole of Iraq. I said, how much have you got? He said, 175,000 tons. So, yeah, we had a lot of meat. And I had to send Andy, this guy. From then on, he even ended up living next to me in the green zone. But his name remained Andy the Meat Man. I even married him to his wife. And I even married him as Andy the Meat Man.
So it was the Lord's presence of provision for you.
Yeah.
How you'd understand. That's very helpful, thank you.
I want the cloud to come back. Because we need to see his glory and his provision. When I was speaking at a primary school one day, I did a school assembly. And I wasn't asking them for money, but one little boy called Sean came up and gave me $1. He didn't say anything, he just gave me $1. And I took that $1, and wherever I went, afterwards I told people about Sean's $1. I'm telling you about it now. He gave me $1. When did we go back to school, Peter?
We were back there last November.
Last November we went back. Sean was still there. And I said, Sean, do you know how much your $1 turned into? He said, was it $10? I said, no, more. What, 20? No, that $1 turned into $4.5 million by people coming and laying their dollar. So if any of you want to come and lay your dollar, you're welcome.
Or pounds would do.
Pounds or dinars or
credit cards.
You've already got one of those today, don't get greedy.
so all these carry on. Talk to me.
Sure, I don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to phrase this question. I'm not sure even what the question I'm asking is, but just about end times and kind of the signs of the times and all this kind of stuff. Do you believe, kind of where are you at with your thinking and where we are in that cycle going towards Jesus returning and all of these things that are going on in the Middle East and that we're seeing, the significance of them in that, if you see what I mean?
It's quite interesting, isn't it? I think something is happening. All the time people say, oh, the sign of the times. Yes, something's happening. Do you know what's happening? I don't know what's happening. Jesus said he was coming soon, 2,000 years ago, and he's not come yet. But he will do. And I promise you, when he does, you won't be hanging around here for long. I promise you. I promise you the weather will be better. There are lots of these donation bracelets here, so everybody who donates on top of my dollar gets a bracelet. Good, that, isn't it?
Not to be greedy, Andrew, but can I just ask you another question? It's to do with, in the UK, if you don't know much about the UK, it would be fair to say, I think, that most of academia and scholarship would argue that what you've been saying about Israel as the older brother, that idea that Israel still has something outstanding in terms of God's promises towards her, is no longer applicable because the church has replaced that in the purposes of the Lord. There are obviously exceptions to that, but one of the things that's really on our hearts here at Moggerhanger is to try and communicate to the generation that's following mine, so people my children's age, who even more in all of the youth gatherings and movements that we're aware of, apart from a few small enclaves, all being taught that. And now you feel a resistance amongst younger men and women to even hint at anything other than not divestment or boycotting. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I am aware of it. I'm aware of it. And it is total heresy and fallacy. And anything which is part of replacement theology, saying the church has replaced Israel, that the future is now and is the church, and we must move forward in a new way, all of that is a total heresy. I would go as far to say as it's the work of the evil one.
I was thinking you might be reconciliatory with that. So
no, I'm not reconciliatory.
No,
and I think all this boycott Israel business is all part of the anti-God business and anti-Christ business. And it is all designed to prevent people from knowing the truth. Amen. And the truth shall set us free.
Amen.
And falsehood and lies will bind us up. And any church which proclaims that, and there are lots of them, will be dead. And will have no life. And will not know the things of the glorious presence of God. And God has promised his faithfulness not just to the land of Israel, but the people of Israel. No nation on this world has produced what Israel has produced. Anything of great significance, even down to the CAT scan and the MRI, all comes from Israel. They invented it. If you don't like that, hard luck.
Thank you for such a clear answer.
Is that a clear answer?
I thought you didn't shout.
Oh, I don't shout, not like you. I'm working on it. I'm learning from you.
Okay.
From one generation to another. I don't know if I'm young enough to be another generation.
We'll talk about that after.
It was more to ask if you had any ideas on how we can share this then. If that's the conviction that we have, you know that if we spoke like that to those that don't agree with us, that we wouldn't, obviously, you're involved in reconciliation.
Yeah, the way you can
Any
deal
way that
with
we
it.
could
Yeah,
be successful.
buy my little blue book and give it away.
Yeah.
I really think we should.
Can I just say the way I deal with it is God does not break his covenants.
Yeah.
Ever.
A covenant is everlasting.
Correct.
From generation to generation.
Man may break.
What we say to people.
God doesn't ever break.
Never. God's covenant with Abraham is an everlasting covenant. God's covenant with all of us through the cross is an everlasting covenant. And God's covenant with Israel has only just began to be revealed. What you will see soon is incredible. Because soon and very soon we are going to see the King. Soon and very soon we are going to see the King. Soon and very soon we are going to see the King. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we're going to see the King.
Andrew, can I just say something to them?
Yeah.
In the light of what you've just said, you know, in the light of the seriousness of what Canon Andrew has just said, given it's the only time he kind of raised his voice, but in the light of the seriousness of it,
You're not shouting loud enough.
yeah, in the light of the seriousness of what he just said, which I know there's a groundswell of agreement about, can I just use this in a way to highlight this summit that we've called? Because if you look around this room, how many of the emerging generation are here? What percentage of the emerging generation are here? Very few. And I think this is a reflection of what is...
Joe?
I said very few. Very few. And I'm glad they're here, you know, and there are a few others. But there is an urgency that we pass this message on to the next generation. In my heart, a desperate urgency for many, many reasons. And so, I mean, I'm not jumping on this like an advert, but it just rises the sense of urgency in my heart and a desperation to reach this next generation with the message of reconciliation in the Middle East and with the message of God's mandate for Israel. So can I ask you just to take that summit and pass on and get people there? Thank you. Oh.
Daphne, Andrew's helping you in Israel with the documentary as well.
We're doing it together.
You've got so much pressure on your time, Andrew. But I understand you seem to be very keen about this documentary,
It's
working on the
very,
ground.
very important.
Could you explain to us, because I'm obviously really encouraged here that we can encourage these guys to go for it, but when I heard that you felt the same about it, could you explain to us why you, I think you're giving, I understand it, some time to this?
Because it's so important that the message of Israel is taken to the next generation. That the next generation sees that God has not finished. He has only just began. He has started from the beginning with one message. And this generation has to take on this message to a generation that does not understand, that does not know, that has been denied the reality of the truth. And I really pray, look, I pray that you will go from here and that you will be inspired by it. We really need your help. We can't do it without your money. You know, we pray for peace and we pay for peace. And all of these projects, however important they are, they require real action. And they require that we will truly do our part. And what each of you can do, I don't know if you're all from dodgy churches who all do it, but your own fellowship groups or worship groups can hopefully support us and help us in trying to raise the support for this. We need it now.
Yeah. It is quite distinctive in that goal, isn't it, to try and communicate.
Absolutely. It is very clearly aimed at the young people. And we're going to take them everywhere.
Right.
From Hebron, from Hillel, from the Machpelah, where Abraham and Isaac's graves are, right up to Samaria, to the Samaritans. The real Samaritans, not the good ones in the phone book, the real ones who are the ancestors of the Good Samaritan. They're my friends.
And you're going to be connecting with the Messianic guys on the ground?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Going to Bethlehem.
And to Bethlehem.
Right.
To our school.
Yeah.
Everything.
Thank you very much for that.
You name it, we'll be there.
Yeah.
We might even take them down to the Jordan for a good dunking.
What would the Archbishop say to that?
He would love it.
Okay.
Next one.
What were you like when you were like my age?
Best question of the day. Well done.
Are you 9?
No, 11.
11.
Whoops.
I can tell you exactly what I was like. Because when I was your age, my teacher said to me, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And already my mother had said, "Andrew's a very nice guy, but he's not very clever. He's not the brightest of boys." So my teacher said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be an anaesthetist, doctor, puts people to sleep, and I want to be a priest." And she said, you can only do one thing, you can't do two. And she said, you're Pentecostal and they don't have priests. So, I was a very active child, very, very active, so my mother tells me. Whatever we did, wherever I went, I always run ahead and then run back and told them what was there so they didn't need to go. And most of my friends were old people. I used to go and visit old ladies. And I say old ladies because they were old ladies. But many of them were bedbound. And I used to get them their shopping, their food. I even used to cook for them. And when I was a boy, at the age of 15, I was given the freedom of the borough where I live. Because they said never before had a child done all of this for old people. And then the next year, I was given the freedom of the borough again. And they said never before had they given the freedom of the borough to anybody twice. But that demonstrates what I was like at your age. So if anybody ever says that you're too young for something, don't believe it. Go for it. Do it. I really, really believe that you're going to achieve a great deal. And I really pray that God's glory will be on you and even you. Can we have another question?
Yep. How would you finish this sentence? Take risks because?
Because the story of God is a story of risk-taking. And we share in the story of God. And we never know exactly what's going to happen. But we know it is. That's a risky business. I really like all of you. I like you three most. But I like all of you so much here. It's really wonderful being with you. Joe, come here and choose one of my books. You can choose any of these books here for yourself. Right? That one, that one, that one, or that one, or that one, or the real book.
Or the real one. Can't have the one in the leather case.
The real book is the most expensive one, the hard one. That my Jacob told me to get.
That sold it.
Is it gone?
Have him sign it before you sit down.
Joe, ask him to sign it.
I only sign any book in green. Why?
So if it's not in green, it's a fake.
Yeah. If any book is signed by me, not in green, it's not real. And it's in green because they use my pen to sign Saddam Hussein's death. To Joe, love and blessings, Andrew White. I think you should sign it there. Go on, you sign it as well. Underneath. Joseph. That's wonderful. I might have to get you to sign me a book afterwards. With Joseph.
Okay.
You finished or?
No, he's got a question.
Oh, honestly. Sorry, it's an inside joke. He's a professional questioner. This is a really tame one. You're fine. Andrew, where do you see yourself and/or your ministries 5, 10 years down the line? You said to the question prior that you don't know in line of risk taking where things are going to go, but where would you like to see yourself or your ministries 5 or 10 years down the line?
I can over by the next
I hope that I will be able to do a lot on the political and religious kind of base. A lot of the conflicts in the world today are religious in orientation. And religion, when it goes wrong, goes very wrong. And religion has gone very wrong. I want to try and help some of it go right. Do I ever think there'll be really peace in places like the Middle East? No. Do I ever think there will be a so-called two-state solution? Well, I don't only not think so, I disagree with it. Totally. Do you agree?
I agree as well.
Yeah. Good. Well, 1 or 2 people agree with me.
Thank you.
I've got some cards up here, if anybody wants my card. When you come up here to bring your money, you can take a bracelet and a card, and it might be Arabic one side, but the other side is English. Canon Dr. Andrew, who is he?
I don't know if you wanted to show that
Joseph,
video
would you
of the
like
school.
my card? Yeah, play the video.
We can try. We'll give it a go.